Welcome to the Poor Sports Podcast. Once again, back.
We're back. We've kept a very good schedule, which is that's usually the Achilles heel of most podcasts. Yes. Is that they do not stay on schedule.
Yes. Well, part of the thing we've done is the editing schedule is very lax. Typically, it allows me to.
It really is all on you. I just show up, man. That's about it.
We might be doing some live streaming soon, some live in-person podcasts soon, and the scheduling will be more of a nightmare. But right now, we're recording this on a Tuesday. Last time we recorded on a Monday. Listen, it's not a fucking journalism pod. God, I keep swearing in the intro. Why does he do it? That's the only reason we're not succeeding is because I'm screwing the algorithm. But we're not a journalism podcast, so we're not breaking news. We're not. Nobody's listening to us for actually current events.
We're just giving our bad takes on sports.
Bad takes. We're talking about sports poorly. Might have some. I might start selling Poor Sports merch doing comedy because I feel like I can make a funny enough joke about the name, and then I don't have to do a joke that specifically is on the shirt, and that would be nice. Come see me do comedy if you would. Specifically, the big one is the last show I do before I have another child in my hands to ruin my life is June 25th at Tacoma Comedy Club's new location, 6th and Proctor. It's very exciting, 100-seater. If it's 1/3 the size of the old one and nobody shows up, it's going to be very sad.
That'll be embarrassing.
Please
I'd feel bad for you.
Thank you. I hope you come, by the way.
I will probably be there. I will.
You and your wife, and probably not my wife, and also you don't have to subject your wife to it either. But
I'll find a good group of people to come that would laugh at your jokes.
That'd be good.
At the very least, pity laughs.
Just a bunch of racists. Bring them along. My wife will be like so pregnant. Like it's 40 weeks. She'll be 37 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
We could, by the way, it could get preempted by a child. I could get bumped off the show by a child.
It's possible. Yeah, that would be a little disappointing.
Yeah. So this episode we talked a lot about guns, or at least gun events.
A lot of shootings this week among basketball players, mostly, and football players,
and news about shooting. We talked about former Lakers, people with the last name Adams.
Yeah.
A Seahawks signing. And then we did our fucking home run game. We changed it.
Stay for the home run game.
It's got a new wrinkle, folks.
You can come for whatever else, but
stay
for the home run game.
Play along
It's
at home.
America's favorite game.
I want to know, this is what, if you listen all the way through and you play the home run game, please tweet at me how far off you were on either of those. And be honest, because I will know if you're honest or not.
Someone will be dishonest.
They'll lie. They'll say I nailed them both. Perfect. Perfect score. All right. Follow me at DKC McLean.
Alex SSN.
All right. Thank you. Please enjoy this podcast. By the way, it feels like it's been forever since we last podcast. It's the longest possible distance between... No, not quite. If we had recorded this one at 8 p.m., this would be the longest possible distance between podcasts.
A week and a day.
Yeah. And it feels like it. I was...
anytime I was gone. I was out of town, so of course it feels like it to me.
Yeah, but I was like, oh man, I feel like there's so many topics that we haven't talked about yet which is true. There are a lot of topics that we have not talked about.
There's something about that week when all the conference tournaments are going on in college basketball that just crazy news happens during that week.
Oh,
I always line it up with the same trip I go on every year to Vegas, and it seems like every time we're there, something weird happens. Like when the COVID shutdown happened, it was that week. The Rudy Gobert, the mics, all of that stuff, that was during that week. NFL free agency is always going on then, so there's just like a flurry of like NFL news usually that just comes out of nowhere. It's just one of those weeks where things seem to happen, and it happened again this week.
Yeah, they happen.
A lot of topics.
Boy, did they happen. So I'm going to tell you about my weekend of comedy briefly.
Let's hear.
And that, because I opened for someone who you probably recognize.
Okay.
Maybe didn't even know she does comedy, but she's a very funny comic. Caroline Ray. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, from Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yes, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And really fun. This is, hopefully she never hears this, but in the pandemic, I did a show with her.
Yeah.
And I used to have an ass-eating joke in my act. Anti-ass eating, I'll make that clear. It was I'm against it. I'm very much against it. I remain against it. I have not opened my mind on this.
Yeah.
And we did a virtual show.
Yeah.
And she spent like the first 20 minutes of her time shitting on me doing that joke, basically.
Really?
And then emailed and all that. So this time I was like...
Was she serious? Was she like actually mad at you?
I don't think she was like mad is probably the wrong word, but like not happy. I wouldn't call her happy.
She's pro ass eating.
Just anti-Casey's act, basically.
Okay. So it had nothing to do with ass. I don't remember a lot of ass eating on Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yeah,
so.
very, very little. I mean, she's a dirty comic. She says fuck on stage and all that.
I've
and
seen her do some stuff. She's pretty funny.
She's very funny. She's the kind of comic, too, by the way, that, first off, this isn't me just saying to bring me on the road with you because, by the way, first off, don't do the ass-eating joke anymore. It's out of my act. Don't worry, Caroline. I recorded it.
It's
and
gone.
So it's in the annals of history. God.
You should put that in your act.
Woo! I got to drink some whiskey off that. By the way, I've also been, I've done 2 podcasts in here. And have protected our bottle of Eagle Rare, not because I think you'd be upset if other people were drinking it, because I think we have a pretty good honor system on whiskey consumption, but because it's a good way to track our progress.
That's true. It is. You got to kind of keep a measure. It's like a growth chart.
Yeah. Would you like one, or do you?
Yeah, you can.
All right. It took a real.
Give me a little one.
Really had to shake.
I was thinking about going to the gym after this because we are midday. Yeah, I can be that guy running around the gym smelling like booze.
There's a lot of those guys.
There's actually a lot of those.
Yeah, that's not a person who doesn't exist at the gym.
Thank you.
You're not ruining the gym experience for other people.
No.
I had yesterday, the guy I had on had this Bullet bourbon, which is good.
Yeah.
But is not as good as the Eagle Rare, and I was a little bit sad that he didn't want to.
If you're just sipping whiskey, you could do a lot worse than Eagle Rare.
Yeah. Is it the most expensive bottle of whiskey you've ever purchased? Because at a point, I think it was for me.
Not based on its retail price, because its retail price is like $33 or whatever. And when we found it, when I found it, it was through Amazon, so it was at its retail price. If I had bought it on resale, it'd probably be close. But yeah, I guess I haven't really purchased any like really, really good ones, but I've definitely spent more.
Yeah,
just on like the basic brands though.
Yeah, that's. Actually, you're right. Probably this bottle of Bullet is more expensive. Than
I would think so. Yeah,
and I like it, but I think like it's whatever, not as smooth or any of that stuff. Yeah. So Caroline Ray was cool though. I was in Enumclaw, which is kind of a funny spot for her. Second time I've been.
That does seem like a weird spot for her because she's a pretty big name.
Well, it's funny because she's come to Seattle a bunch and Tacoma a bunch, and she was like, "So what's this town like?" And she, doesn't know. She's like, "Do you live here?" And I'm like, "No, I live."
Did you tell her about the horse?
They already knew about the horse. They had Googled and found out about the horse.
I imagine if you Google Enumclaw, that's got to be the first thing that comes up.
It's very early. And by the way, like they are good sports about it in my experience. I actually haven't done a horse fucking joke, but I did reference that I could do one after and they like lost it because I was like, I'm not going to do the joke that you think I'm going to do, but it is there. We can all acknowledge that the joke is there, right?
That's just one of those things that it'll be 100 years from now and they will not have shaken that reputation.
I bet people got fucked by horses in a lot of cities.
Most of them weren't exposed the way Enumclaw was.
Yes, there's no documentary.
Oh God.
And then the other thing they're known for, frankly, is like overt racism for a King County
I could see that. All those foothill towns, the King County foothill towns are, they're an interesting place.
Well, so what is it? King County foothill towns are like Kent would be one, or you're talking
I'd
further
say like
up?
even farther east, because like
Enumclaw, so like Ravensdale.
Yeah, like there's like a whole bunch of little towns out there, kind of like in the Enumclaw vicinity.
Buckley.
You go out for a drive out there, they all kind of blend together. But,
they all know you're Japanese out there.
A lot of white people out there.
They all have a perfect calibration that you're not fully white.
Yeah. If there was ever a place where like you kind of envisioned the people to be like Old West types, and
well, that's the embarrassing thing about Enumclaw is like these folks act like I had one joke that I did make that they liked was I was like, there's more fucking Confederate flags per capita here than Alabama. What are you guys doing?
Definitely. And that's where those foothill towns are where you get the people who suddenly develop a Southern accent.
Yes.
The drawl. And it's like, you grew up here. You never should have developed a drawl just because you listen to a lot of country music.
Yeah, you were listening to hip hop 4 years ago, and now you have a fucking cowboy hat on, and you can't stop talking about fucking Garth Brooks that's like a dated reference even. Who's that guy? Jake Wallen. Wait, who's the guy that said Morgan Wallen? That's the guy.
Morgan Wallen. Yeah.
Who used a racial slur?
Who dropped some? He dropped some N-bombs and suffered no repercussions because it's interesting. Music. He found the right community for that sort of thing.
Yes. Anyway, it was cool. It's funny. I've been to that theater so many times. It was at the Chalet Theater, and I've now been there like 4 or 5 times, and now I have like favorite places to go eat while the headliner's on stage or go get a drink.
Downtown Enumclaw is pretty cool. Like I've been there. A lot of like the smaller Washington towns, especially down like in this area, like south, the South Puget Sound area. Those towns that are kind of out there a little bit, they all have like really nice downtowns that like you can go park your car and walk around and like get some good food, get something to drink. Like if you live there, I can see why it would be appealing for sure.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of underlying things that come along.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those places where you go there and you're like, oh man, I could totally live here if it weren't for the people. You know what I mean? And it's not like individual people I've met. I've met plenty of decent people in Enumclaw, but I have also like, I met at the Yellow Beak, which is a bar out there.
Yeah.
My old roommate was one of these guys that grew up in Kent and decided he was a cowboy in his late 30s. And we would go to the Yellow Beak. He made a bunch of these Enumclaw friends, too, that were like, there's just the fucking, like, they were like, you know, I kind of don't like that meme that's like, these are the people in the replies, and it's a bunch of white dudes with Oakleys. It's kind of like a hacky, it's like, just not interesting to me.
Funny. It's funny if you use it in small doses and at the exact right time.
The problem is I don't know how recently you've used it, so I could be insulting your last tweet on Twitter.
I do know that I have it saved on my phone in like a memes folder.
Got you. Oh, a memes folder is a smart idea. I'm not quick enough with the memes, and maybe the reason is because of that, and maybe that's good. Maybe that's good as a comic to not get obsessed with me. I know people who like accidentally or intentionally repeat memes on stage, and I'm like, this is bad. Like, why would you do this?
It's the only times memes are good is if you're using it as a reply on Twitter or something. Because you can get away with almost anything if you say it through a meme.
Yeah.
Without typing actual words.
I feel the same way about puns. I think puns are good when they're like, when it's in the moment, when it's a quick pun, when it's you being witty. You make a connection and you say it. But like comics sometimes will have a pun, like a big fucking build up on a joke. And it ends in like a meaningless pun, and you're like, "Oh, this is trash."
You can't do that. They got to be quick hitters. You got to be quick hitters.
Yeah, it's got to feel like you thought of it right then, and maybe the reason is because you thought of it right then. Like that's, I kind of think, it's a real indictment in my opinion on comics.
Yeah.
Who use puns as like a standard part of their act. And then I did a show in Anacortes, Washington, with my pal Todd Royce, who was in that chair a couple days ago also.
I can feel the heat.
By the way, that could be true. Do you know, have you seen Todd Royce? He's about, Jay Hollingsworth has this great joke. Do you know Jay Hollingsworth?
Mm-hmm.
He has a joke where he's like, I weigh about too much, maybe 3 much if I'm being honest, and I think Jay and Todd might be pushing 4 much, to be honest with you. And so, he might have some residual heat.
This chair takes a lot of abuse. Because I'm not a small dude, and I'm sitting here. But if there's a bigger dude than me getting on this chair and this thing's surviving.
This dude was big. He was actually, the reason it's the chair, this is like fucked up to say about him, but he knows. We talked about it.
Yeah.
The reason it's these chairs and not those chairs, he and I were going to do a podcast at one point.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of chairs at my house.
Yeah.
And actually, one time, Jay Hollingsworth was coming over to do a podcast at my house, and I was doing something like the day before, and I was much thinner at the time, and I stood on a chair, one of our dinner chairs, and like the bolts or whatever were loose in it, and it just like crumbled underneath me. And I was not at a weight where it was like, I was like, oh, this is I was just so happy that didn't happen when Jay sat in a chair.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to happen to Todd, so I have these are like old, like dining table.
Yeah, they look like 1950s diner.
Yeah,
chairs.
we have a matching table in the garage, but
Yeah.
it's like they're metal, like circular metal tube frames.
Yeah, these
like,
can withstand anything, dude.
Yeah, this is like nuclear apocalypse. You sit under one of these.
There's an earthquake. Hide under this.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
You'll be fine.
Yeah. So and there was a seismic reading when Todd was walking up the stairs, but no, that's fucked up. By the way, I would absolutely make these jokes to his face, which is why I don't feel bad about it. And he would make them about me, which is hilarious because I have his dream body. But anyway, we did a show in Anacortes. And have you ever been to Anacortes? Have you ever been to the San Juan Islands?
I've been to the San Juan Islands.
So you've probably been to
I've been to Anacortes, but it's been a long time, man. I don't remember it.
So that's where the ferry landing is. So I've been in the city a lot.
Yeah.
But I've never like spent time doing stuff. I've rarely been there as an adult because I've rarely been to the San Juans as an adult.
Yeah.
And these are like Enumclaw folks. These are like the King County Hill folks, but in whatever county that is.
I feel like that's true for most of Washington, Western Washington. Once you get outside of the I-5 corridor in Western Washington, the type of people get interesting.
Yeah, that's right. If you have to get on an even numbered highway to get to a place, that place is fucking odd.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Once you get out to like Lake Stevens, Granite Falls, you can go any direction off I-5. It's gonna get weird, man.
Yeah, yeah. If you ever smell cow shit,
yeah,
it's gonna be strange where you end up. But so anyway, we did the show, and it's like, he warned me. He's like, they're fucking rowdy. You're probably not gonna get to do a lot of material. I had been asked to do this other show, and I had agreed to it. My friend Jess Everett, he had a show called Jess Everett and Friends at Tacoma Comedy Club, and I realized as I was driving, I'm like, well, I'm leaving at 5. Jess's show started at 4. Why did I not do a show? I could have just done the first spot on it and left. And I was like, oh fuck, am I gonna be late for this show? Did I get the time wrong? And I did.
Yeah.
So I showed up at this 7:00 start time show at 7:07, and I'm going on first, and it's at a fucking Elks Club. And so this is like, these folks, it's a membership drive. These folks have been drinking all fucking day.
And there's a certain, those Elks, Eagles, all those types of clubs, very blue collar.
Yes.
Very blue collar audience. Yeah.
My wife's grandparents, everyone used to be part of these like Kiwanis or Elks or Eagles or whatever and her grandpa is Jewish. But like barely. You know what I mean? Like he's
Jewish.
Right. You put a dash in there. He passed away before I met him. I never met him, but I don't think he was like identified as Jewish, but the Elks or Eagles or whatever chapter he was involved with wouldn't allow Jews. They didn't know he was Jewish. They weren't kicking him out. Yeah. But when he found that out, he was like, "Oh, I'm joining the other ones." Like that's not that long ago. That's like 2 generations ago that this was happening. And it's one of those. Maybe it's Lions. I don't know. It was one of them. I'm not disparaging anyone in particular.
It's probably good in general.
The policy has changed, by the way.
Yeah, a lot of those clubs probably deserve to go by the wayside.
Sure. I mean, and they're always like, I like them. It's my crowd. They're fun. They're like rowdy. It's like I always know when I go to a show like that I'm gonna have fun. Yeah. Am I going to work on material? Am I going to develop part of my act? Maybe not. I might get a funny clip. But so we go out there and it's like, it's rowdy. I go up, I'm 7 minutes late. I literally walk in and the lady's like, okay, we got to get you on stage. And I'm like, can I piss? I've been driving for 2.5 hours. She's like, yeah, the bathroom's over there. Then let me know because we're going to put you right on stage. And I go on, I show up at 7:07. I'm on stage by 7:10.
Did they have anything preceding you up to this point? Was there a host that was like trying to like get through?
So they did a raffle. So then they go, without further ado, your first comedian's Casey McLean.
That was a hell of an intro. Yeah.
At least she said my name last. That's a common mistake in non-comedian intros of comedians. Yeah. Is to go, your comedian is Casey McLean, and then give a bunch of shit that nobody cares about me, and then go, okay, here he comes.
Yeah. How many people are in this room at this point?
Oh man, there's probably 75 or something. It's like
pretty small room, I'm guessing.
Small room,
so they're all like, crammed in there.
It's full.
They're crammed in there.
Every table has people at it. There might have been empty seats, but every table has people at it.
So you got a room full of blue-collar people crammed in tight.
Drinking since probably 4 p.m.
Drinking all day. They're their show is starting 10 minutes late.
Right.
Yeah, they're on fire right now.
And I was like, I don't think it's going to be that bad because he told me last year the show started a half hour late. So I'm like, I'm fine. I'll just show up. It'll be like 15 minutes, which I'd like to show up. I was planning on showing up an hour early. That's I went from I thought I was showing up an hour early to I'm showing up 7 minutes late, right?
It's a long drive up there. Long drive.
Yeah. And I fucked up. I left late. It was my mistake. So I get out there and I'm like trying to riff a little bit. On those shows, you kind of want to just like feel out and they give me nothing. And I'm like, oh, this might be bad. And then I start going into material because he told me, he's like, they're not going to let you do material. Don't even plan on doing material. Just come out and fucking do crowd work. You're not going to get to do material. Then I just had to do my whole fucking act. I was like bored almost. I was like they just liked my act and didn't. And then about 30 minutes, or no, about 20 minutes in, the mic cut out.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I'm like yelling a joke.
Yeah.
I fucking finally yell that joke out. They hand me a mic. I pitch my merch. I do one more joke. Then Todd goes up, and it's like he was up there for probably 50 minutes.
Sure.
I bet you the mic was working for like 18 of those minutes, and we tried 4 different mics. I was back fucking with the sound system. There was no making this thing work. So we fought it the whole time, and that was, and then they were all, what I like about places like that is they assume that you're in Anacortes, you must be spending the night. Come get fucked up with us, which is nice. And if I was spending the night,
very welcoming.
I probably would have, but I was not. So
yeah, that's a long drive back too. After all of that,
yeah,
beautiful Anacortes. I feel like it's usually just a stopover. They're probably happy that anyone shows up and does comedy for them in their own town.
I went to a fast food restaurant after, not to brag, but I feel like the moment they saw me, they're like, "This dickhead's getting on the ferry. He's never going to be here again." Like he's just trying to get something cheap to eat on the ferry, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I think the ferry runs that late. I'm not sure.
So you take the ferry there? Did you?
No, that's where the ferry landing that goes. That's the ferry landing that goes to San Juan's.
Yeah. So you just drive up there. Just a long ass drive up I-5.
And then you don't get to go on an island.
It's terrible. Mm-hmm. Terrible. What are we even doing?
By the way, let's get some fucking live comedy shows or this podcast on the San Juans. Let's build a San Juan.
San Juans would be great. They're beautiful. It's beautiful up there. But
I always wanted to do a show on Orcas, and especially on Orcas, it's like everything closes at like 8 p.m. That's where my grandparents lived on Orcas when I was growing up.
I went to 6th grade camp on Orcas.
Oh, was that Lake Moran?
Camp Orkyla.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was where they sent us every year for 6th grade camp, which was, the first time you go to like 6th grade camp, pretty eye-opening stuff.
Did you go to 6th grade camp more than once?
No, I wasn't that bad. But when I got there, I was like, this is my first time like really being away from home by myself for multiple days. I didn't shit for days because that's just one of those things.
Do you have a shit thing?
Nah, as a kid though, I'm just like,
interesting.
This feels uncomfortable.
I went to, when we would go to Orcas Island, an interesting thing about Orcas is all the kids are they're both sheltered and overexposed. Like they're bored.
Interesting.
And sheltered. So they don't know TV shows, but we got my sister and I was 11 years old, my sister was 7 years old, and this kid's like, "Hey, do you want to come to the beach with us later tonight?" I'm like, "Oh, maybe." And he goes, "Yeah, we're going to do mushrooms." He's like 12. He was 12 years old, and he's trying to get my 7-year-old sister and 11-year-old me, or we can fudge these ages a little bit, but to do mushrooms with him. And I'm like, I haven't seen marijuana at this point in my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't even, back then, it's probably different now. Because, if you're bored in a town like that, you just have your phone and you're just.
Yeah, but you don't get reception out there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they're connected to somebody's Wi-Fi.
I was constantly connecting to fucking Vancouver, like Rogers Mobile or whatever. Yeah.
Wow. International.
Yeah, that's right. So tell me about Vegas.
Vegas, yes.
Let's incriminate some people. That's what
we're not as wild now as we used to be. We've been doing this trip for about 9 years. We just go for conference tournament week for Pac-12 tournaments, and then there's like a variety of basketball tournaments down there. So if you're a sports fan, I always tell people going that week as opposed to this week, like the March Madness week, is the better play, because the March Madness week is just like sausage fest. Dudes everywhere just watching games on big screens on TVs. But if you go to the conference tournament, you can actually go to the games. There's still like places to be on the strip or like all the various places you'd want to be in Vegas. You can actually sit down and gamble afterwards if you want. You can't really do that during March Madness week because there's so many freaking people there.
Right.
So it's a great time for like what we do, a guys trip.
Is it cheaper to go down there? And that
definitely cheaper. Which is weird to think that it's cheaper to go when there's actually games being played in the city versus the following week when no games are being played in the city, but people just want to go there and be in a sports book watching games.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird dynamic. But I have some friends that go this week and they insist it's the better week, and I go the previous week and insist that's the better week. So
you could just stay an extra week and quit being
oh
a
god,
fucking deal.
the longest I've ever stayed in Vegas was like 5 nights, and even that was just like. You just wrecked afterwards, man. You do a lot of drinking, a lot of gambling. Most of those casinos are really smoky, which just makes you feel like hell. Like you don't really notice it while you're in it, but as soon as you like walk away into fresh air, you're like, oh, my throat's a little scratchy and my lungs hurt.
Did you? You were never a smoker, were you?
Never a smoker.
Yeah,
no.
I smoked, and it's funny because I hate it too.
Yeah,
I like smoking. There's no difference between how fun it feels to smoke indoors versus the feeling of being in a place where people are smoking indoors when you're not smoking.
Yeah.
Like the experience gap is enormous.
For sure. Yeah, the secondhand smoke in a Vegas casino is not great.
Right.
It's definitely gotten better. Like when I went 10 years ago, still tons of smokers. There's very few now. And now it's like a lot of the people that are smokers are probably vaping as opposed to smoking cigarettes, which, is a lot less intrusive on a secondhand basis to me. So it's like, yeah, it's different. It's definitely changed a little bit. But, yeah, you get done with a week like that, man. And I was only there for like 4 nights this time. But, man, I was tired. I come back, I'm tired. It's like you're up till 2, 3 a.m. every night. Gambling after sitting there watching basketball all day, and my friends and I were like, we're all on the same page. Like we're there to watch some basketball during the day, walk around a little bit, and gamble at night. We're all good at playing cards. A lot of people will gamble, but there's like a difference between actually just gambling and like being good at playing cards.
Yeah.
And like we're pretty good at playing cards, so like we know what we're doing.
What's the game of choice? Does everyone have the same game of choice?
We used to just play blackjack. Blackjack can be volatile. It's very quick. A lot of hands coming out. A lot of money going quickly. Now we've found as we've gotten older that Pau Gasol poker is a good game, and I would recommend that game to anybody. It's very slow. You typically tend to push your hands. So if you're just there to like socialize with friends and drink, Pau Gasol poker is a great game for that because they'll bring you free drinks while you're sitting there at the table. So if you're a social gambler, learn Pau Gasol poker. It's a good piece of advice.
I've always heard that the free drinks thing, and then first off, I have a thing with gambling where if I'm gambling, I typically don't like to be like impaired.
Yeah,
which is
you're just there counting cards. Gaming the system.
A little bit. I mean, not like with poker specifically, it's like I need full concentration, right?
Yeah,
because you're concentrating on a lot of things.
No, it's totally different. If you're actually playing poker, you're not going to want to like drink the way we drink.
If I was playing slots or whatever, I went the first weekend I ever hosted at Tacoma Comedy Club. I went with Brett Ernst to Emerald Queen Casino. We took an Uber, and we had the Uber pull through a smoke shop drive-through down there to pick up a can of chew for him. I had quit chewing by that point, but I used to chew also, so I knew there was a smoke shop right down by there. But in an Uber, we went through the drive-through of this smoke shop. And he's chewing at the table, which he was like, I'm going to teach you craps, and we're both fucking hammered.
That's not a good time to learn craps.
Yes.
No.
And he gave me it was like 4 rolls worth of instructions. Yeah. And eventually he got frustrated and handed me $20 like I was his wife to go play slots.
Yeah.
And we showed up there, by the way, like it was after 2 a.m., so last call's gone. We had snuck 4 beers out of the green room, dropped one on the sidewalk immediately, shattered everywhere.
Was this the old EQC too, or the new?
No, the new one. It's the new one.
Well, that makes it slightly better. But
this is, by the way, we had done this. We had been at Tacoma Comedy Club, so we weren't doing it. Like all of our drinking is waiting for the Uber, so we're just like on the street corner, fucking hammering. I asked him an embarrassing question in retrospect, but I was like, hey, because we had like bonded. It was like fun, and I was like, hey man, can you tell me like honestly how much money did you make this weekend? And he's like, dude, no. What are you fucking stupid? No, I can't tell you that. Like it's bad for you to know that. It's bad for the club for you to know that. It's like bad for me for you to know that. Like no, I'm not telling you that. We go down there and he's chewing at the table, and they're like, you can't chew at the table. And
I'm surprised you can't chew at the table. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone smokes freely, but
I suspect because like a spitter could get knocked over onto the table really easily. Where if an ashtray gets knocked over, they vacuum it and we're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
If a spitter gets knocked over, the treatment's a lot different.
Sure.
As I know from experience.
Yeah.
Spitter is a much worse hazard.
that's disgusting.
So, but outside of that, like, I mean, that's a bad game to learn. Slots are fine, drunk. You're just, because it's mindless and you have your only input is like more or less money bet at once, basically.
Sure.
Blackjack, honestly, blackjack, I don't think that I would do, unless it was the circumstance where you're like, I'm just paying for the experience, which I'm fine with gambling.
Yeah. I assume most people are less knowledgeable about cards than I am. And a lot of my friends are. I mean, I feel like we're kind of a rare breed that like really, like I learned how to play cards from my dad at a very early age.
But but that doesn't really help you, like, it means your baseline is good, but drinking doesn't make you better.
No,
and you're not playing against other. If you're playing like, and everyone's drinking, and if everyone's drinking and you're playing poker, that's fine.
Yeah,
but like, it doesn't really help you at a blackjack table to drink.
Not really. I mean, if you know basic strategy, you're gonna be fine. Like, I guess if you were counting cards, like generally you wouldn't want to be impaired, which you could do, but it's not a lot of fun. Like, I mean, if you're there to have, like, you go down there on trips like these, and it's like, I'm taking my money with me. I'm expecting to lose it all. If I come back with
what's the damage? What was the damage? Is this as bad as me asking Brett?
No, it's not as bad. I think, like, for me, usually if I'm going to lose money on a trip like this, it's changed over the years. You know, when I went 10 years ago, I was like, if I lose $500, that's going to hurt. Yeah. Now it's like, if I lose $1,000, it's not going to be that bad. You know, like, and that sounds terrible. I understand that. Like, but that's legitimately how it is for like people our age who are gambling, and most people probably are even going harder than that. But you know, I feel like we play well enough and know like when to walk away. Like, I've definitely had some trips where I've won like a few $1,000s. Yeah, like, that's happened before. But it varies, man. I've also played, like, I have friends. Part of the reason our group works so well is because we all, even the people that maybe don't know like how to play by the book to a T, they'll just listen to everybody else who does. But I've definitely played cards with some people, some who you even know, that are just absolutely horrendous. And like, we'll do things that will mess up the vibe or the table for everybody. And also there's just like, there's some people that just shouldn't gamble. Like, their energy is bad. Like, if you're sitting there gambling away money you don't feel like you should be losing, then you probably shouldn't be gambling. Like, that's just, it's, for me, I just look at it as like, it's entertainment. If I lose the money, it's like if you paid to go see a show, right? Like, that's going to cost you a couple $100. That's money gone, but you're going to get entertainment. There's no guarantee the show will be good, but that cost is sunk regardless. That's how I feel about gambling.
Yeah, there's a real compulsion thing with gambling and with alcohol.
Yeah.
And like, even golf is this way, right? Where you're like, you meet people who are like, if we're at the bar, it's fine. If we're at a point where it's like they want to drink more and they shouldn't drink more, it becomes a problem. Yeah. Because you can't stop them and have that not be a problem.
Right.
And if they can't get a drink, they're going to act out in a different way. Like, yeah, I know those people. I don't know who the people you're talking about are specifically. I could probably guess because we don't have that many mutual friends or acquaintances.
You'd narrow it down in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, probably. Sure. And so none of the group remain, because I also saw a picture of the remaining group, and I don't know very many of those guys at all. Yeah. So that means that the guys that I know probably are the problem. Like, all the guys I know are the problem.
The guys you know don't go with us on this trip. That doesn't mean that they haven't been invited in the past, but they don't go.
They're uninvited for a reason. Got it.
No, I mean, it works. It's kind of a cool trip, man. Like, when we first started doing this many years ago, it was just me and a couple friends. And then it kind of grew. You know, everyone had another friend that they would bring in, and it's like, hey, you got to be okay with a couple things. You got to be okay with like sitting there for like literally hours on end watching basketball, because we'll go like Wednesday. We went to every single Pac-12 tournament game. There's 4 games, so that's like more than 8 hours of basketball where we're sitting in an arena. Granted, it is a lot, but we love college basketball, so it's exciting to us. And then you got to be good with gambling. And like, if you're not good with it, then like, just don't gamble, right? Like that, no one's going to hold that against you.
Is that right? No one would care if
No.
you didn't gamble? Gotcha.
Absolutely not. And a lot of times we go do our own thing too.
Yeah.
It's just, you have a lot of people that like, if they're in a group, right? Like it's like peer pressure. If everybody in the group is drinking and maybe you're not a big drinker, you might drink just because they're all drinking and it might go poorly.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the same thing with like gambling. It's like, look, no one's trying to pressure you into this, but if you're going to do it, you got to have the right vibes for it. Everybody knows the bad, like if you've ever gambled before, you've certainly gambled with a bad vibes person, and it's just tough. It's tough. Like even like you could be like the superstitious type that thinks that brings you bad mojo. I'm not necessarily that type of person, but I'm definitely a bad vibes person just in like any social situation, right? And if you're just a bad vibes person to be around, it just makes it awkward and tough for everybody.
The vast majority of the gambling I've done in my life is no limit hold, or I should say hold'em poker.
Sure.
A lot of no limit like tournaments and shit like that at people's houses and then like spread limit games that which function similar to no limit ultimately at casinos. And I didn't start playing before like the World Series of Poker got big or like Rounders made poker sexy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think that the World Series of Poker makes everybody think they're fucking Phil Hellmuth. Yeah. Or not everybody, but it makes enough people that you're like, Jesus, dude, like you can't yell at every person when you get a bad beat. Like you got to fucking move on because you're taking money from that guy more often than not.
Yeah.
Also, you're in my fucking dining room. You can't be yelling at my friends. You know what I mean? You can't be like this is not that serious of a game, and we're playing for fucking $10. Yeah. And there's a thing like my brother-in-law, who if he listens to this, you deserve every bit of what I'm about to say. I started golfing again about a year ago, a little over a year ago. One of my problems when I golfed when I was younger was that my expectations for myself were too high. It was perfection on every shot. Anything short of that pissed me off. And
if you grew up playing team sports as you did, because I was the same way, right. I could totally understand that. Where my view on golf actually flipped to the point where like I'm happy shooting 95 every single time, and I don't care how bad it looks in the process.
Yeah, so that's me now.
Yeah.
Because the reason I quit playing was because it was causing me genuine anger management issues. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, then I should just not do this. This is fucking, I don't like it. I'm not enjoying myself, and I'm not getting better. I'm not trying to get better. And my brother-in-law is a guy who, like, we played 18.
Yeah.
And, like, first club throw was, like, hole 3.
It's too much.
Hole 6, he fucking like overhead axed an iron into the ground, like fucking it stuck a foot into the ground, and I'm like, dude, you suck at golf. Like you are not good. You do not deserve to be this mad about how you're playing because you fucking suck. And I feel that way about a lot of people when they play poker. It's like they think that part of the thing is yelling at your opponent for making a bad decision, and it's like you've probably made 15 bad decisions or fucking you're not good either. Like neither of you are good. So you yelling at him, trying to demean him.
I mean, that's it goes beyond poker. I can tell you that.
Sure.
All the table card games in Vegas, the people that are usually the biggest assholes, that are the most aggressive, that yell the most, are the ones who play really badly.
Sure.
Like the ones who play well are generally pretty quiet because like for the people who play well, like you're not going to lose. You're not going to blow through all your money typically if you're like a decent card. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's just these are all games of chance to some degree. And that is partially true. But if you know basic strategy of all the games you're playing, you can do better than somebody who has no knowledge whatsoever, right? It's not a coin flip for you if you have some understanding of what's going on. And but no, that type of person, they certainly exist in casinos in Vegas, and they usually suck at what they're doing.
That's kind of my view on gambling on sports is I don't think there's any chance that I'm going to, in my life, win overall at gambling on sports.
No.
I research at 0, and I don't know why, but for some reason, if you research at 0, you don't become incredible at it, right? But I kind of feel like if I just bet on a game, like the Super Bowl this year, I really didn't have a dog in the fight. Mm-hmm. I didn't care either way. I like Patrick Mahomes, kind of. My brother-in-law is a big Eagles fan.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of fun to root against the Eagles. So I bet a bunch of money. I bet like $150 combined.
Yeah.
I can now say that since I won. To my wife, I said 50 originally. I got about $50 on him. I bet $150 combined on them, and just to make it's like fun. And I know that like maybe in this moment I'm going to lose 150.
Yeah.
Over the course of time, I'll probably come close to breaking even, especially if I'm betting with friends and we're betting the Vegas odds or betting the Vegas spread. I'm basically going to be 50-50. They're very good. Vegas is
They know
very
what they're
good.
doing. Yeah, they know what they're doing.
So it just makes the game more fun. It just makes
That's all
me
it is.
care about what Patrick Mahomes is doing. You know
Right.
what
It's
I mean?
the same reason why if you were watching a sporting event with a buddy and you were like, I bet this next play goes this way, and you bet $1 on it, right? Like that automatically increases your interest in whatever you're doing, and that's the part of it that becomes fun. I get it. And we're all competitive. If you're a competitive person that grew up playing sports, like, we're not playing sports like we used to, right? So you have to find other outlets for that competitive energy or else you're just going to go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I liked poker a lot, why I continue to like poker, but I don't play very often.
Yeah. It's tough. Like the home poker games have kind of gone by the wayside. That was the thing like 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like everybody had a home poker game, right? That was the thing. And now it's just not so much. But even still, like if you're in Vegas, you go past one of those poker rooms, it is just like they're always full, generally with dudes. There are a few women that play, and I'm sure a lot of the people that are in there playing suck at poker.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I used to talk in really fucking arrogant terms about, because Muckleshoot Casino has a spread limit game that I used to play. And I'm probably like, in that room, I'm probably, a couple $1,000s up overall. But I would talk with a buddy of mine and we'd be like, yeah, there's some, what do we call it? There's real fish in there. And you're like, dude, this is fucking embarrassing. Like we both suck.
Yeah, and to somebody else in that room, you're the fish.
Yeah,
well, that's always going to be the case.
They're the dumb guy that thinks you suck, and you're the dumb guy that thinks they suck when you both actually suck.
And this is why I only play like card games that individually impact me, right?
Sure.
Like it's not like I'm playing against a bunch of people. I'm just playing against the casino. It's me in the casino, and they're probably going to win. So that's my out. I can always feel like they were supposed to beat me, and if I win, then it's great.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, did anyone do anything embarrassing that you're willing to talk about on the podcast?
I don't know. I mean, we used to have embarrassing things happen all the time. I mean, there was one or two pukers. That happens though. You're up till like 3 a.m. and they're bringing you the free drinks, and depending on what you're drinking or how you've mixed them, you might not feel so good. We also have this habit. We are very close to a Taco Bell cantina there. And a lot of guys at like 2 or 3 a.m. when we're done playing cards and ready to go back to the room, they love to go to the Taco Bell cantina. And it's smart. Not for me. I actually did do it this time. I hadn't had anything to eat since like noon. And it's like 2 a.m. And I'm like, I got to eat something at this point. And I really wanted a sandwich, but the line at the sandwich place was like 30 people long. And so I settled for the Taco Bell cantina. And the next day, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
It wasn't great.
Do you have any of these guys? Because, so I'm lucky enough. My wife likes to drink when she's not pregnant.
Yeah.
My in-laws we talked about, my dad, my mom, everybody's like drinks to some varying degree of healthy consumption, right?
You're surrounded by cool people.
Yeah,
these people are down.
They're down, and turns out I'm as down as any of them, if not more, a lot of the time. So I have like a pretty good tolerance.
Yeah,
and I do comedy. I'm like out at bars a lot.
Sure.
So I do have a pretty steadfast rule: is like unless it's a special circumstance, I basically won't drink until after I'm done being on stage performing for that night.
That's a pretty good rule.
Yeah, and so that does a couple things. One, it stops me because you can only drink so much after the late show, right? Like you only have so much time. So I've never really drunk in a comedy club doing embarrassing shit. That was like looked like I was near vomit. That was just a hiccup.
Puking on this show would be a highlight. That would be a highlight.
As I'm like, I have a fucking tolerance for that. I'm
just
like a
do
real
it on
man.
me. Just
I'm one of these
do it on
real men, and then I just vomit on a keyboard. But I will say, like, I've only spent 48 hours in Vegas in my life.
Yeah.
Which surprises some people. It's like not even like I would probably go again and enjoy it. My wife hates cigarette smoke, doesn't like gambling.
Yeah.
We go see shows around here. Like there's nothing in Vegas for her per se, like that would be like exciting. Outside of like maybe it's cold here, we could go be in a warmer,
great. Yeah, weather's great.
A warmer climate, something like that. But there's nothing about it that is appealing to her. And the only things about it that are appealing to me are debaucherous.
Yeah.
But we get plenty of debauchery here in Tacoma.
Yeah,
so,
no, I totally get that, dude. I love Las Vegas to the point that when I was getting married and my brother was giving his best man speech, he called out my love of the city of Las Vegas.
That's awesome.
I've probably been there like 30 times almost.
Wow.
Yeah, I go a couple times a year, but I love it beyond the gambling, and like I'm not going there and going crazy every time. I mean, there was a point in my life where I did that,
Sure.
but I can't do that anymore. I would probably die. My heart would explode in my chest, and that sounds terrible.
Yeah, there are things that can make your heart explode in your chest.
Yeah.
That sometimes happen. So, but do you have any like weekend warriors or like amateur hour drinkers ever in your group? Like guys, because you'll occasionally run across a guy who's like, he's not ready for prime time because he's been out of the game for a while.
Yeah,
recent father is pretty bad usually.
Yeah, there have been situations. We definitely had a guy who actually got to come back this year for the first time.
He came off probation.
Yes, he was on probation. This was his first time back was my bachelor party about 2 years ago, which was there in Vegas. But this year he got to come back to this trip for the first time in many years, probably like 6 or 7 years at this point. And to recap his night back then, it was, we were still right around 30, so
Sure.
still young enough to like have like really hang. And like I remember we had a couple nights on that trip that were like 4 or 5 a.m. I remember going to a Buffalo Wild Wings at like 5 in the morning, and then 2 people had to leave because they had to puke.
Wow.
These were our wild times. And he missed his flight. I was not sharing a room with him, but we had like a suite, and I had my own room, and he had his own room. And when I got up to go to the bathroom, I noticed he was still asleep, and his flight was taking off in like an hour and a half. And I was like, okay, we got to get this guy up right now.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. He was gone.
Yeah.
He had that kind of night the night before where I'll never forget him buying 2. They weren't the full-size fifths of Jack. They were like the trap, like not, they weren't little ones, but they were like the mid-size.
Yeah, the pint.
Yeah, like the pint. He had bought 2 pints of Jack Daniels, and he drank both of them in about an hour.
That's too much.
While walking the strip. So not only like...
They could have been, because that's pretty quick that's a fifth.
Yeah, a fifth in an hour. That's a lot.
Do you think it could have been 200 milliliter, which is like a little less, but still a lot if you drank 2 of them?
It's still a ton. He was very drunk.
I had a friend one time drink a fifth of Jaeger.
Yeah.
And my other friend called me, and they're like, "What do we do?" And I'm like, "Get him to throw up. Are you fucking stupid? Like, get that fucking alcohol."
It's either that
out of
or
him.
you're going to take him to the hospital.
Yeah, then you're all too drunk to do that.
Yeah, so he was pretty drunk. He missed his flight the next day. It was bad. He obviously got put on probation for a number of years, and rightfully so. But most of the people in this group, it's like, just like you were describing, like the people in our lives are down. I think when you think of like a guy's trip to Vegas, you picture something like Out of the Hangover where, you have a bunch of people that are like, they're on lockdown at their homes all the time. This is their one escape.
Yeah.
And they hate their lives otherwise. I don't feel like that's the case for us. Like that's
good.
We all have very understanding significant others, and our lives are not that bad. So this for us is just an extension of fun as opposed to. But
I do think that's real, though. I think for a lot of people that is real.
It's absolutely real. When I would tell people I would go to Vegas, like coworkers and things like that, they all assume that trope is the reason why. And it's like, no, I like the person I'm with, and I like my friends, and I'm not doing this just to like get away from reality. Like this is just like part of my life now, and I enjoy that.
Well, that's like why that's why I don't go to Vegas. Is because I don't get like there's nothing, I'm not escaping anything. You know
I totally understand why it's not for some people.
By the way, I have friends that live there now. It's turning into like a really cool comedy city, so I probably will be in Vegas at some point. Hopefully,
it's a good
in the next
comedy
year.
city. I've been to some shows.
I actually almost texted you, but I forgot. My friend is Gabe Rutledge. Talked about him on the podcast before. He's doing a bunch of stuff at the Comedy Cellar. He's doing like 10 weekends.
Yeah,
10 weeks. It's so fucking long at the Comedy Cellar in Las Vegas.
I've been there. It's a good. It's kind of an interesting club because like it's got the look of an underground club, but it's just like a room in the casino.
Have you ever been to the one in New York?
I've never been to the one in New York, which I assume probably has all the feel of like the Comedy Underground in Seattle.
Yeah, so it's supposedly the one in Vegas is supposed to be like a close replication of that. I've never been to
They
it.
definitely replicated the inside of it to look like that, but because you're not like going down into a basement, because it doesn't smell like someone pissed all over the place, it's not really the authentic feel, but it does have like the brick background and everything.
Yeah, so you've been to the Comedy Underground in Seattle?
Yes.
Yeah,
many times, yeah.
that was that was easily the closest feeling we had to that. I mean, that was a much grimier club than either of the.
Oh, I mean, if you feel like if there's a fire, we're all gonna die, then you're probably in the right place for comedy.
Yeah, it is funny how it's like in a nightclub basement is the best place.
Yeah.
It really is like speakeasy shit.
It does feel like that. Yeah, there's something about that vibe. The one in Vegas, the Comedy Cellar in Vegas, the one thing it does have going for it is it's in the Rio Casino, which was cool in like 1995 and is now like real kind of grimy and depressing.
Sure.
So it has the ambiance of the entire building it's in is kind of like run down.
Sure.
So maybe that helps.
All right. Well, we should move on because we got, whatever, a limited amount of time. I'm going to talk about like 3 shooting related things.
A lot of shooting.
Right away. A lot of gun talk. This is mostly gun talk, this podcast these days. So first off, it's not on our list, but Ja Morant, he's now like indefinitely. So originally it was he's going to miss 2 games, and then I heard he was going to return after 4 more games. And now I saw some speculation from people with like sources that say that he's probably going to miss the rest of the season. He's checked himself into alcohol rehab, and I guess this is kind of the thing where I think I left myself this out when we talked about it before, but I don't know as much as the Grizzlies do. So I thought it was suspicious and arguably immoral to suspend him at all over this video. And I still think that. However, that doesn't mean that he couldn't potentially have other demons. And I think you brought up a good point the last time. If they've taken this as like they're kind of weaponizing mental health being something we're aware of, mental health awareness as something we're aware of, as like kind of an excuse to like deflect any blame off them or Ja Morant, it's pretty shitty. If they're doing the same thing with alcoholism, it's not any better. Like a lot of people get checked into rehab for stuff where they don't think that they have a problem, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it happens all the time. It's hard to know exactly what's going on with Ja Morant. I did think it was funny that his counseling that he checked into is in Florida, which I don't believe he's from Florida. Obviously, Memphis is not anywhere near Florida.
Yeah.
He's going to Florida for counseling.
I suspect
an interesting choice.
In the case of alcohol rehab, you probably bring them out into Muhammad a little bit. So that might be why there's more in Florida than other places.
Yeah. I saw some of the old NBA guys were talking about like no one should be mad at Ja Morant. Because like they used to do this stuff all the time, in clubs.
That's what I'm saying.
But this was before social media. Most of them did not Instagram live their exploits in a strip club. Maybe that's the bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think social media is the problem, or is at least a big chunk of the problem. I have that's kind of my thought is like this. To me, this feels like something that's stupid, but not necessarily like actionable or punishable.
It's a weird situation, man. If he comes out of this and is like a choir boy for the rest of his career, that would be something. Like maybe this really was a problem. But in all likelihood, I think most people think, okay, he's going to come back. He's going to be more or less the same guy, right?
I guess that's my point. If he's in rehab for like PR, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, and also it's anytime you have these situations, like a really good one in Seattle was Vin Baker. When Vin Baker played for the Sonics, he had a real alcohol problem.
Yeah.
And his performance suffered as a result. The first year he was in Seattle, he was pretty good. He had been like an up-and-comer in Milwaukee. He comes here, performs pretty well. He's basically replacing Sean Kemp.
Well, I mean, literally, they got traded for each other. So
so he's replacing Sean Kemp in myriad ways. And he was good, and then all of a sudden this alcohol problem develops, and he starts sucking, and you notice the performance drops off. With Ja Morant, nothing that we've seen from him off the court has impacted his on-court performance.
Is there any confirmation that Vin Baker developed an alcohol problem here, or is it one of these things where you're like approaching 30 and your metabolism catches up with you? And also they were coming off of a lockout year, if you remember, and him and Sean Kemp both came back a lot fatter from the lockout. And so you're like, is this a thing where your metabolism and your like ability to handle a hangover and your, a variety of things, that might cause someone to spiral into a more damaging version of alcoholism that aren't just the alcoholism, like the age-related things.
I totally think that's. I mean, if you look,
so you think it was because Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the reputation I know about Wisconsin is the Wisconsin fucking drinks.
They can put it down. Yeah. I think I think that there is something to that. I think if you look back at most of us, if you looked at our early to mid 20s, and you were drinking like that in your 30s or 40s, you would be easily deemed an alcoholic.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Easily. And when you do that in your 20s, you're just being a kid. You're just being young and enjoying life. And then at a certain point, if you keep up that lifestyle, it becomes a problem because your body doesn't respond. We all have been through. I mean, you and I, especially at this age, have been through that. Yeah, you know what happens. So yeah, I'm sure some of those guys, it's like, the metabolism goes. They can't do it like they used to, and they don't really know any other lifestyle. They're just used to getting done with the day and drinking. I mean, it's like...
Well, basketball is a thing, too, that, like, being a professional basketball player would hide so many metabolic...
Yeah.
Like, you're burning so many fucking calories every day.
Just running all the time.
Yeah, even if you have a naturally bad metabolism. I've actually heard people say, like, if you're a fat NBA player, you are an alcoholic. There's no way you can be a fat NBA player without being... Lamar Odom ate nothing but candy till he was fucking, like, 40.
Yeah, he talked openly about it.
Yeah, and he was thin.
Yeah, no, I know those guys. Some of those guys that are like the big centers that you see that are like 4 bills, and you're like, how is this even possible?
Yeah,
you were burning calories throughout the day. If you weren't playing basketball, I can't imagine what would happen to you.
Yeah, true. Though those guys, the knees on those guys, maybe they don't make them run as much as like a 6'8" small forward.
Yeah, I mean, you can take lots of plays off if you want to.
Yeah, true. So then the other gun stories are, and by the way, I'm glad both these stories, at first I was upset because we were going to be late to these stories, right? But literally, this is what I have written into, because this is like the early reporting, is I have Joe Mixon shot a kid, which is not true.
Okay, you got to explain the story, because I saw this briefly, but I didn't like dig into it to exactly know it.
Okay, well, I mean, listen, neither did I. But what I know is there was like somebody shot a gun at kids playing with Nerf guns near Joe Mixon's house.
Okay.
Joe Mixon is not arrested, charged, anything like that.
He was just in the vicinity.
Yeah. So this definitely got thrown into like a social media, because I guarantee. Do you remember? This is going to go a little dark for a second. Remember the Duke lacrosse case?
Yes.
So enormous news story, all that stuff. I remember talking to a friend of mine who's like a pretty informed sports fan, and I was like, we were talking about like media, like bias and bad reporting. And I was like, yeah, like the Duke lacrosse thing. And he's like, yeah, we're all that team raped those girls. And I'm like, well, did you know that they got acquitted and completely cleared on that? And he's like, oh, no, I never heard that.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where it's like this goes out into the world and we're like, Joe Mixon shot a kid. And luckily, like I fucking checked before we did this podcast, because I thought until like 3 days ago, I was like, again, we haven't done this podcast in 14 days. So I'm like, it's like about 3 years actually since we did. It feels like a long time. I missed you, I think is what happened.
That's
I missed you.
I understand.
I was sitting up here just fucking empty glass of whiskey.
I assume when I'm not here, you're just sitting at this table drinking alone
100%
most of the
time,
day. Yeah.
That's how I build up the tolerance. I gotta look cool on the podcast, so I gotta build up the tolerance.
Man, work on your camera angles.
That's right.
Yeah.
And by the way, have you noticed me paranoidly checking to make sure they didn't shut off every? I think I figured it out. I figured it out. And we have the third camera that's actually going to work this time. I think
that's a good one.
We got a whole fucking thing.
It's a real
going
setup.
on here.
Every time I come here, there's something new with the setup.
Hopefully, not much longer. A lot of this stuff. This came out of the garage. This monitor isn't new. I did shop for new monitors for a while. So Joe Mixon didn't shoot a kid. I'm sorry, Joe Mixon, for thinking you shot a kid. Or maybe you did shoot a kid and you got away with it. I don't know. But also,
I mean, Joe Mixon has a history, which is why this story got... That's the only reason the story got written the way it did.
Sure.
You know, if it was... who's a squeaky clean football player? I mean, just think of any squeaky clean football player out there.
Yeah,
Tom Brady.
Sure.
Pretty squeaky clean. If it's Tom Brady, the story is not getting written that he shot a kid.
Sure.
It's not getting written that
way. Well, I mean,
way.
even like, do you remember the early, when Jason Williams, the center for the Nets, when that originally happened?
He shot his limo driver.
But the original version of that story, nobody suspected that he was...
Yeah, the limo driver got shot.
Right.
And Jason Williams happened to be
at his house.
Yeah, at his house.
With Jason Williams' gun.
We could probably solve this in a day, guys.
Yeah. So, also, Sean Kemp was unloaded. By the way,
another example of bad initial reporting, for sure.
Bad initial reporting. Also, the thing that made me suspicious from the get-go was, they're like, Sean Kemp got arrested for being involved in a drive-by shooting in Tacoma.
What's he doing at the Tacoma Mall?
What the fuck are you doing
in broad daylight? Like, I know Sean Kemp in his past, many, many years ago, made some bad decisions.
Yeah.
Nothing like this. This is, if somebody were to commit a drive-by shoot, now I get it. Okay, there's a lot of jokes about Tacoma that could be made. Sure. You can probably get away with a drive. I've been waiting for breakfast at the Hobnob, which, if you don't know, is kind of like close to the Hilltop neighborhood, like downtown Tacoma.
It's like right on the border of Hilltop.
Yeah, right on the border of Hilltop. I've been waiting outside for breakfast there and heard a drive-by shooting take place.
Yeah.
So it does happen in Tacoma and people get away with it. But if you're Sean Kemp in a luxury car, you're probably not getting away with it. The Tacoma Mall, a lot of witnesses.
Yeah.
That area is heavily populated any time of day.
Yeah.
And doing it in broad daylight. It's like all these things don't add up. It's like extreme stupidity if he actually had done what they were initially reporting.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it too is you're like, I don't think this is the other thing that made me suspicious is everybody just goes like, oh, it was a drive-by shooting. He's a drive-by shooter, and you're like, the guy's like has a lot to lose.
Oh,
I don't
absolutely.
think Sean Kemp is like such a motivated, cold-blooded killer that he has joined a Tacoma gang and is now taking part in gang warfare to get his fucking, like, no, this is insane. And then as it turns out, I mean, this is like the story from his attorney or whatever it is. He was tracking down his phone and then he was returning fire.
Yeah.
So again, Sean Kemp, glad we didn't report. By the way, come do the podcast. If you're coming down to Tacoma, don't go shoot people or at people or get shot by people.
Sean
come
Kemp,
do the podcast.
Sean is he's a really good dude. I've sat with him and he's told me some amazing stories before, and he once sponsored our rec basketball team. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so he bought our jerseys and everything, and we won the championship that year. We didn't let him down. Really nice guy, though.
Did he sponsor it with his
Oscar's Kitchen? Yeah, we used
cool.
to go there all the time.
Which was a restaurant that he used to own in Seattle.
Yeah. And, I mean, yeah, he definitely made some bad decisions in his past, but he seems to have reformed a lot of those. I do find it funny because I have a lot of friends that are like, they have friends with air tags. This always comes up on our, like, this last trip I was on.
Sure.
And there's always at least one or two people in the group with air tags. And I'm like, what are you going to do if you lose your wallet with the AirTag in it? Are you going to go track it down? And if you do, what's going to happen when you get there? You don't have a weapon.
Sure.
Like, what are you going to do? This is obviously somebody who was prepared to just steal something from you. So they're probably prepared to defend themselves if you come looking for it. So it is funny that, I mean, I get it. Like,
it's interesting.
It's exactly what I would do if I lost my phone. I would turn on Find My iPhone and I'd go figure out where it is. But if it's at the Tacoma Mall in somebody's car, I'm probably not going to get it because how am I going to approach that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want some contact with the people before I confronted them for sure.
Yeah.
You
give them the benefit of the doubt. You say, hey, I think you might have found my phone.
Yeah.
And I would like to come get it back if possible. And if they are non-compliant, then I think at that point you have a good understanding of where this situation stands.
Yeah, we had a guy one time pre-iPhone where I was like, 17 or 18 years old walking through downtown Seattle, and my buddy lost his phone. Mm-hmm. And he just started calling it. And back then, everyone had their ringer on, so he had probably some like Limp Bizkit song or something playing. So it was like obvious that it was his phone. It wasn't even a Limp Bizkit song. It was like the like tones,
the tone
touch
version.
tones or whatever those things were called. Like so it wasn't the actual song. It was just like the fucking
sounded
beat
like
version.
The video game version of that.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, hey man, I think you got my phone. And the guy's like, no, this is my phone. And it was like my phone number calling. And he's like, no, it's. And then the guy was like, you got to give me $80. And my buddy's like, I gave you $40. And he took it. But even that, you're like, I don't know. Back then, phones were fucking $120. I mean, I guess back then you also lost all your phone numbers. So
back then you also had to wait like 2 years to upgrade your phone, right? That was all.
But even if you
wanted to
rebuy it, it was like $70 or something.
Yeah,
like
it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It's more the hassle of having to go through like losing all your contacts and all of that junk. Yeah, I get it. But
I have an AirTag on my dog though, and I think
that's smart.
We've only had it happen once, but she's gotten out of our yard more than once. But since we got the AirTag, it's only happened once.
Yeah,
and it tells you, it's like, oh, she has left the home base, and that's good. You see, you can pull it up and see where she's at. We have an AirTag on our. This is embarrassing. We have an AirTag on our remote control in the living room because we are so bad about having it fall in. Because the AirTag, it'll be like, it's 4 feet this way, and you're like, okay, that's.
So it pinpoints it, which is important.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important.
The wallet thing, I did So right before I got married, I went to the Hard Rock Cafe. What, I don't even know if they call them that anymore. Hard Rock Seattle.
Yeah.
And at my bachelor party, we took like a party bus out there and drank all over Seattle.
Yeah.
One of the stops was there. I left a brand new iPhone, it was like an iPhone 5 at the time or something like that.
That was a big deal back then. Yeah.
And it was like, also you're about to get married, and so you're like, I have no money left. We're all out of money, and now it's, I'm gonna have to spend $800 on this phone to replace it, and so I'll find my iPhone. I'm like literally on someone's phone, walking around Seattle trying to find my phone. Can't find it. Nobody's got it. My friends keep accusing people of stealing it, which was fun. The next day, it's like at Hard Rock Seattle. I can see on the map. It's at Hard Rock Seattle. And they're like, where were you? And they're like, there's no phone here. And then finally, it took like 45 minutes of negotiating with them to go to the rooftop, and they found my phone.
Yeah.
So
that's helpful when that happens.
Yeah.
But it's not in the possession of like a criminal at that point.
Right. I think if it's moving
Yeah.
and they're not answering, I'm not going to someone's house.
Yeah.
Unless, again, if I've made contact with them, I will. But
Yeah. I get that it's a hassle to like lose things like that, like your wallet or your phone.
Yeah.
But if someone takes them from you, the odds of you getting them back peacefully, very slim. I applaud Sean Kemp for trying to go get his stuff back, but you knew how this was going to end. Although he was prepared. He returned fire on these people who shot at him.
Yeah.
But these people clearly weren't messing around when they took his stuff. They were ready to kill for it.
Yeah. Sean, come on the podcast. Also, by the way, bad rap for old Sean Kemp. And maybe Wikipedia's wrong. It says 7 kids from 6 women.
That seems about right. I mean, he had one kid who played for UW a few years ago for basketball.
Uncreative name for that kid. But I guess, like, maybe it's just because we live in the age of Nick Cannon, who's like Sean Kemp times 3.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's not that many kids for a guy that's, like, known to have a ton of kids.
Back in the 90s and early 2000s, before, like, the internet was prevalent and we could just look this stuff up and social media was able to make jokes about every one of Nick Cannon's kids when they happen every month, it was a lot different. And back then, if somebody had, like, 3 kids by 2 women, you were like, that's a big deal. Now it's like, that happens all the time.
I had a very dark Nick Cannon joke that I'll tell you off the podcast for a while. That was like,
it didn't land.
It landed like the people who liked it a lot. Yeah. Comics, just these horrific degenerates.
Yeah.
It's one of those jokes where I've never gotten more compliments on it, and then I've done it like in front of audiences, and they're like, no, we hate you. We don't like you the rest of your act because you did that joke.
He's the host of The Masked Singer, which I don't like.
Okay.
But white people love that show.
My wife,
he's like their Wayne Brady now.
Yeah, but what's crazy about Nick Cannon to me, the crazy thing about that show, period, is they got mad that Rudy Giuliani was on that show, but you have an anti-Semite and a decades-long anti-vaxxer on that show. Jenny McCarthy and fucking Nick Cannon's like said crazy shit. Yeah. Anti-Semitic shit, and they're like, yeah, but look at him. He's so cute, and he's so charismatic. He's Black Seacrest, you know?
It's just regular people singing, but they're in costumes. Like, that's not that exciting, man. Like, I don't know why people love this show as much as they do.
Yeah, Ken Jeong and the other guy, Robin Thicke.
Oh, Robin Thicke, yeah. Who has his own problems from the past.
Right.
Ken Jeong is the only one getting out of this clean.
Ken Jeong is the only hero. Oh, man. Who was the guy? Is like Antonio Cromartie, who had like 11 kids.
Yeah. He had a vasectomy.
He hurdled the vasectomy.
Yeah.
That's some athletic sperm.
He's the most potent man ever.
Yeah.
And then he got on Hard Knocks and could not remember the names of his kids, which understandably so.
Yeah, between the concussions and the count of those kids.
If you're in double digits, you get a pass, man. You don't have to remember all the names at that point.
All right. I want to play this Russell Wilson. We've done enough Russell Wilson talk. This Russell Westbrook, this clip here, because he got like heckled. He got a fan kicked out. Eventually, maybe the internet will work. Or maybe we'll just do this a different day, Alex. Maybe we got no fucking multimedia experience today because it doesn't seem to be cooperating. You got millions of dollars invested in this studio, and the fucking computer doesn't work.
I know nothing about the Russell Westbrook story.
Let's see if I can find, because it's on Reddit, so it's possible that these people have been like fucking canceled since
Russell Westbrook, the last original Sonic.
I know. It is fun. I wish his career was even better.
Yeah.
Because it is fun that the Thunder fans never get to see a draft day version of him. Like he wore a Sonics. He held up a Sonics jersey on.
Yeah, that's always fun. Oh, he got a fan kicked out.
Yeah, for maybe this is the here we go. It must have been I think the Reddit might have been taken down for some reason. Here we go. Okay. Oh, this is something else. This is boring. Anyway, so I can't think of a more there's like this thing that's going on I remember Vernon Maxwell played for Houston.
Yeah.
And I've always known the name Vernon Maxwell because he just it seemed like he just torched the Sonics.
And then he became a Sonic.
Right. But he when he played on other teams, it was just like I could probably quickly pull up his career stats. But him and his wife had a miscarriage. And I remember him telling stories about how, I believe this is Vernon Maxwell, by the way. I could have the player wrong, but fans taunting with that. And that's like a serious thing that you should be.
Yeah. I assume it was probably the Utah fans because nobody, if you've ever seen Vernon Maxwell on Twitter, he goes after Utah and he has killer jokes about Utah. He goes after them, but it's hilarious and they get really upset with him. And Utah fans are also notoriously some of the most rabid and worst in the NBA.
Maybe I'm going to, hopefully this is, oh yeah, insisted the fan was, so this is May 1st, 2018 is when this byline is, but, oh, okay.
So we got into it with a Trailblazers fan, yeah.
Classic Portland.
Those classless Portland fans.
Yeah, it seems like we're not going to get a good version of this, but what a fucking, also Russell Westbrook, his career has taken like a Russell Wilson-esque fall from grace.
Yeah, it's a bad decade for Russells.
Yeah, it's bad to be a Russell. Russell Simmons, I think, has had a rough decade. Even it is bad. Okay, the other story, and we're gonna play our game, by the way. But so Pau Gasol. Let's see if we can get some video of this, because of these fucking. So Pau Gasol. Here's a Spanish guy named Pau Gasol. He wore number 16, I believe, right?
I have no idea, man. Pau Gasol is right on the cusp of relevant NBA player versus he's not irrelevant. He's just kind of boring.
That's kind of my point. Is So I'm gonna pull up some Pau Gasol stats because the worst part of this is I think Pau Gasol. When they said he was going to get his number retired by the Lakers.
Yeah, how many years did he play for the Lakers? But he won a championship there, right? Didn't they win a championship?
I think so. I think so because he played alongside Kobe. So you're 7 years with the Lakers?
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good.
7 years, and
a long career. I still think of him as a Memphis Grizzly.
Right, and in 1 year he played 27 games the year he gets traded.
Yeah.
65 games 2 years later, 65 games 2 years after that, 49, 60. He played 2 seasons of, 81 and 82, which is great.
Yeah.
But you look at this and you're like, this is a very good.
It was the prime of his career, so I get that. But
your reaction is the exact reaction I had, which was he was good enough to have his number retired?
By the Lakers, a very proud franchise that has retired a lot of numbers.
If Memphis retired his number, I would understand that. I guess he was there actually less time. But yeah, isn't that surprising? It was so it's surprising to you also because at some point you're like, well, they got to retire Anthony Davis's number then, right?
Yeah.
Or they got to retire.
It feels like Pau Gasol capitalized on being Kobe Bryant's friend and being the friend of the most popular, probably the most popular Laker ever at this point. Has its benefits apparently. He gets his number retired. He gets to be in the rafters forever. But I agree. I don't think he is I don't associate him with the Lakers in its entirety.
Yeah.
It's like Randy Johnson. Randy Johnson is maybe like the baseball equivalent of Pau Gasol. Very good, but did it for a multitude of teams.
But it is so. I guess maybe this is right. 2017. This article says Pau Gasol cements Hall of Fame status by reaching elite milestone.
Yeah.
Do we believe, you and I, Alex and Casey, believe that the Poor Sports Podcast as a collective, do we believe, is he, I was like on my, I guess he played so long that it's like, is he a surefire Hall of Famer? Maybe he is. Maybe I'm
the Basketball Hall of Fame lets everybody in.
Okay,
Jack Sikma got in a couple years ago, and it's like,
oh, is that right?
He's a nice player, but
God, I kind of want to look up some Jack Sikma stats. I want to look at win shares here.
I mean, Pau Gasol is definitely a good player. There's no doubt about that. He was very good. But yeah, he for him, it's like he kind of played in the down years of the NBA, right? He comes in when the NBA is not popular at all. It's
right
during the and one time that we were talking about a few weeks back. And then he kind of transcends this era of centers being like the focal point of an offense to centers being basically an afterthought in the offense unless they can shoot threes. He transcends that entire span. So he kind of plays in a weird era of basketball. And he still stood out at his position. So that probably makes him a Hall of Famer. But he also had a very long career. There's a longevity aspect here too.
And he's not, see, like, you go to, like, awards. He won the Rookie of the Year and nothing after that. He played in 6 All-Star games.
He was never going to win it. I mean, he was in
2 championships with the Lakers. That's good, but, like, is Robert Horry in the Hall of Fame? Because that dude's won a lot of fucking championships.
He's won a ton of championships.
He won 7 weekly awards. He was the Player of the Week in the NBA 7 times.
Yeah.
Rookie of the Month. Never Player of the Month, but Rookie of the Month.
3-time Rookie of the Month. That's impressive. There's only so many months in a basketball season.
That's true. he better have won Rookie of the Year. Yeah, it seems to me like this dude, like, did he ever, can we see if he ever got a fucking MVP vote? Like, it's just like nothing.
Yeah, it was kind of nondescript in a lot of ways.
Right, and so you're like, that's just a weird thing that happened. It's like the argument, he's like the Eli Manning.
Yeah.
Where he just like was around so fucking long that he became like a leader. He's got to be like high on the scoring list.
There's always those guys. Like I think based on everything I've heard about Pau Gasol, and then having seen him speak a few times on TV and in documentaries, he seems like he would be a well-respected basketball player. But there are those guys that become quote unquote leaders just based on age and longevity, and you're like, are they actually good for the kids?
Right.
We don't know. They've just been here a while.
Also, in my mind, Rudy Gobert, who I've just pulled up on the screen, is like his spiritual successor, which is like a European center in a time that's like kind of dicey for centers. And like I don't think Rudy Gobert has ever put up like crazy numbers.
He's played in like 2 of the worst NBA cities. He's been in Utah and he's been in Minnesota. I mean, those are tough places to excel as an NBA player. You just don't get a lot of attention there.
If Rudy, this is my question: is Rudy Gobert a Hall of Famer? If Pau Gasol's a Hall of Famer, you're like this dude who's averaged 12.5 points, 11.5 rebounds. Whatever fucking.
Yeah, I mean, Gobert's 30. He's 30 right now, so he's kind of in the middle of his prime. As long as he keeps producing at this rate, he'll probably be a Hall of Famer.
So it's just everybody gets in, then that's the
NBA, the Basketball Hall of Fame is the most liberal of all the Hall of Fames. I mean, you just have to show up for 20 years. I remember Kevin Willis, I think, got in, and Kevin Willis is the consummate like Iron Man of basketball.
Right.
He played for like 25 years for like every friggin' team basically, but he just kept showing up to work. He was never a star. He just kept showing up to work. Probably won a couple championships in there, and he got into the Hall of Fame. Basketball Hall of Fame will let everybody in.
Pau Gasol, 29th all-time in win shares, which I know I've brought this stat up to you specifically. I don't know that I shared it on. Just talking about Nikola Jokic, which, by the way, you say Jokic, and everyone else
I go soft J.
You go soft J, or silent J.
Yeah.
Almost.
I'd have to hear it straight from the horse's mouth to know which is the proper pronunciation. But
Rudy
I feel
Gobert,
like we're both right for the time.
Rudy Gobert seems to be on pace to be like he's at 93 win shares at age 30. Pau Gasol, it feels like it just was like and I think I maybe have underestimated the long term accomplishment. This is the hazard of losing your NBA team 15 years ago. Is I lost track of some guys. And you see Pau Gasol pop up, and you're like, he fucking got his number retired by who? Like, I think in 2008 he was still a Memphis Grizzly, maybe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was, because he started in 01 or 02, somewhere around there. I think he started a long time ago, so he was here for like multiple years with the Sonics in town. Yeah, 0102. So
Yeah, so he leaves 07, 08, which I think is the last.
yeah, so that's probably why I still associate him with Memphis, because his entire Memphis career was when the Sonics were in existence.
Yeah.
So at that point, I kind of stopped. I didn't follow the NBA nearly as much as I did when the Sonics were here at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So, by the way, so since the last podcast, we got more information on the Geno Smith contract.
Oh, we did. Yeah, we broke the news last week.
We broke it. We broke it 2 days late. We were first to it. Just nobody knew about it yet. So it's closer. Like the actual contract works out to closer to like the 3 years, $75 million that I wanted it to be, which is good.
It's a pretty good contract for both sides. It's perfect. It's actually like the perfect contract for both sides, especially when you got Daniel Jones out here getting like 45 million a year to be a quarterback in the NFL. You're like, anyone who can perform at Geno Smith's level should be getting paid.
Yeah. And I think it like doesn't stop them from potentially drafting a quarterback high, maybe not in the first round.
It gives them financial flexibility at that position and with their roster as a whole,
which they used the rest of the financial flexibility, by the way. So they yesterday, at least broken by him, Draymond Jones, former defensive tackle for the Denver Broncos, signed with them for a pretty big deal, 3 years, $51 million.
Yeah. The most money the Seahawks have ever given to a free agent that wasn't from within.
Is that right?
An external free agent, yes.
I saw a thing that said that they're like, so they said they were uncharacteristically aggressive in free agency, and I don't think that's, I think it might have said early in free agency, which is the qualifier that makes it true.
Usually the Seahawks wait until like the end. They kind of sit around,
Like, I remember when they signed Cliff Averill, and I was like, "That's how the fuck did they get?"
Yeah, and it was like a 2-year deal. It was like nothing.
And it was like 2 years, $15 million, and even back, that was many years ago. But even back then, you're like, $15 million is a fucking steal for Cliff Averill.
Yeah, and it turned out to be too.
Yeah, he was great, and hopefully this is even better. But
I'm not going to pretend I know anything about Draymond Jones.
I looked some stuff up, and
I know,
there's some mixed opinions on.
Well, you have to go look up the first thing you do is like, if it's not like a big name guy that everyone knows, like J.J. Watt, great example of a guy that everyone would know, right? If it's not a guy like that, you have to go see if it's actually worth it, right? You go look up their stats, you look at what they did, and you're like, okay, I didn't know anything.
And then
about
defensive
this guy.
tackle stats are tough because do you remember like Casey Hampton, the Steelers nose tackle?
Yeah.
If you look up this guy's like perennial All Pro.
Yeah.
You look up his stats, and he's got like 6 sacks in his career or something like that. Let's see.
They're like the unsung heroes of
right.
The team.
They're basically guards.
Yeah.
Right.
The most annoying people to me on Twitter, and I get some people like really follow this stuff closely and know it, but it's the ones who have an immediate, very strong take on a guy like Draymond Jones. It's like, you don't really know.
Yeah.
Like, unless you have been just sitting there watching defensive line play every freaking game and you watch all the games, you have no idea what we're getting.
Well, and a lot of time, so 9 career sacks for Casey Hampton. So I saw stuff that was like, so he didn't have very many sacks in his year, like some analysis like that. And it's like, well, he plays defensive tackle, which is like, to me, like interior offensive line is the hardest thing to judge on that. It's the hardest position that does produce stats to judge on stats, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Seahawks know more than we do. Like, there's no doubt about that.
Oh, for sure.
And
our defensive line sucked last year. So literally adding anybody who's like a capable defensive lineman is going to help this roster.
So, and then they released Shelby Harris and Quentin Jefferson today. So that like basically, I think it like cancels out the salary. So now they're back to having some financial flexibility is the point. But yeah, I do think that you're right that like people who jump to a quick opinion. By the way, I've been one of these people in the past. I might be one in the future.
I feel like I'm like that with baseball, but I get why.
But baseball, stats mean a lot more than defensive tackles.
They're easier to read into stats in baseball than it is in football. Football, there's so many different variables that can affect your play based on the position you play. That it makes it really hard to judge these types of things. And the people that are off, it feels like a lot of the people that are rushing to judgment on these things do not actually know what they're talking about. Like, I don't trust that this random person on Twitter is watching all the Broncos games and focusing on the defensive line to know what Draymond Jones is doing.
But the one thing it does is this dude, Jalen Carter, who's like, to me, the guy, I don't know if he's the best player in the draft or not, but to me, he's the guy who I would most like to see the Seahawks. I would have most liked to see the Seahawks draft. I think it takes some pressure off of them if he falls to them at 5.
Yeah.
To be like, well, they could still trade down if the value's better to trade down than to draft him.
Yeah.
And not feel like, you know, and maybe they can get him later, whatever. We talked about him a little bit last week. I'm a big draft guy, so like you're going to get inundated with draft stuff probably every week until the draft happens. I love the draft.
People love the NFL draft.
Yeah.
I get it. I like watching the NFL draft too. I'm not like a football nerd that's like following that all the way through, but I understand why people do.
I've been Pro Football Focus has a draft simulator. And I've been probably every day run about 30. I'm not kidding, 30 simulators. It's very fun, by the way.
No, anytime you get a draft simulator. I used to do it with the NBA one.
Sure.
Back in the day. Yeah.
The NBA draft, I loved the NBA draft because you look at these guys. Oh, I was going to talk about this. This is kind of cool. Let me see if there's before I fucking drone on about some shit that nobody cares about. Do we have anything? Oh, the only other thing I had was Mark Adams this is just a fucking funny thing to me. Mark Adams got fired by Texas Tech, and Scott Adams got fired by every newspaper in the world, all for saying racist shit to and about black people.
Did you see why Mark Adams got fired from Texas Tech? I had to look this up today.
He was like referencing something in the Bible about slavery. Is that right?
Yeah, with his players.
Yeah.
Look, if you're a major college basketball coach or any college sports coach, and you don't go to like a religious university, which I don't believe Texas Tech is that.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea to probably invoke religion in your message to the team anyway, but then to go the route of slavery, oh God, like what are you doing, man?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I'm an atheist. We've talked about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
You're not non-committal something.
I'm a free agent. Come get me.
Yeah.
It's NIL, right?
Come get him, folks. You heard it. He just needs some convincing. I don't need convincing. I guess as I get older, I'm like less weird about religion because my life is, I got a fucking child. I have a literal picket fence, Alex. I have two kids. I have a dog, a cat, a wife, a house, a literal picket fence.
If you painted that fence white, it'd be the dream.
Yeah, it would be. I would have to start going to church. That would be the rule. I'm way less militant about religion than I was.
Yeah.
So, and especially like, it's weird too because I'm like, well, I told you the story about the dude in Houston who I said I liked Arian Foster because he was atheist. The guy's like, fuck that guy. And I know that culturally, like black people are more religious than white people culturally. Like or more than white Democrats anyway, right? Like there's not. My friend Mario, who is I have a joke about him, but he was like, he came to my wedding and he's like, you're having like, there's like no, it's not at a church or whatever. Like, it's like, there's no God. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're doing. It's like, no God. And he's like, oh, that's kind of like, and I'm like, well, we don't believe in it. So why would I do it? And he's like, you don't believe in God? It was like foreign to him.
It's just like bad luck to those people. I think more than anything, it's like,
don't say those people.
The perception. Those people. Yeah. No, two religious people.
Yeah.
It's like bad luck.
I know. Yeah. It was like kind of strange. But again, it's just like a cultural difference where Washington's like the most atheist state in the country, and he's from Georgia.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I used to go to this church in Hilltop in Tacoma. And I'm like, dude, I've been to church 4 times ever.
Yeah.
And if listen, if it had been black church, I might have been on board. But I went to boring fucking white church.
Based on everything I've seen on TV, they're having way more fun.
Yeah, based on Whoopi Goldberg and Sister Act, it seems like it's cooler. I don't think that counts. But anyway, it's just like a weird thing for me where I'm like, there is shit in the Bible that on its own is problematic. Doesn't require slavery doesn't require a racial element.
Yeah.
But we've decided like we kind of accept that. And I don't know. It's weird to me to draw the line at this, but then again, it's like I agree with you, actually, that this dude should not be invoking religion.
I don't really think that's like the convenient excuse for why they fired him. But the reality is Texas Tech sucked.
Sure.
This year. They were good. They were really good.
So this is how they fired him, with cause.
Yeah, this is how they fired him. This is how they got out of the money aspect.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm sure they wanted to cut ties with him because the team wasn't good this year. Last year, he's a first-year coach. He's like a long-time career assistant. Their coach leaves to go to Texas.
Yeah.
And he takes over as like an assistant that just gets promoted into the head gig.
They're still paying him $3.9 million though.
Okay. So
damn.
they
saved 3.6.
Right.
So.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
But a year ago, the team is like unexpectedly good after they lose their head coach and they promote this guy. And now this year they suck, and you can kind of see like it's never a good idea to promote the longtime assistant. That never goes well. Like that almost very rarely will it succeed. And he's an older guy. The one thing I would take away from this, and I thought this is the very first time I saw Mark Adams coaching a game for Texas Tech a year ago. There's this running gag. I think it's the Onion. It might be Onion Sports that does this, but it's something along. Anytime like a women's basketball coach gets hired, they put out this article that's like women's basketball coach looks like women's basketball coach, right?
That's funny.
It's like, and you can take that however you want, but they put it out every time and it hits. The joke hits multiple times. Mark Adams looks like the person in the picture that they used to promote women's basketball coach. Looks like women's basketball coach. I saw the first time I saw him, I was like, that is like dead on. And if you go look up Mark Adams, you'll see.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So anyway, he's jobless. Sorry.
He's jobless.
Sorry, Mark.
Retire, Mark. Scott Adams, by the way. Dilbert. Did you ever read
guy,
Dilbert?
Yeah. That story is, that's a kind of a hilarious story.
It's funny because, like, who the fuck reads Dilbert anymore? Like, what? How do we, like, this is, did you ever read, like, I actually probably have Dilbert books in the house. I read Dilbert before I worked in an office.
Yeah.
I was like, those, like, you're like, read the adult thing.
It was big in the 90s.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you're like, how the fuck is Dilbert still doing it? Like,
Office humor back then, I mean, that was like the heyday. You had Office Space come out in the late 90s. Then you have The Office come out in the early 2000s. And in the midst of it all, you have Dilbert.
Yeah.
Carrying the torch for office humor.
Yeah. And then, but like, did you read any comics growing up? Can you imagine if like Foxtrot was asking for your pronouns or something? Like, what the fuck is going on here?
This guy is just, it turns out he's kind of a terrible person. The guy who does the Dilbert comic. And and not only that, he's stupid because he shared his terrible opinions with everybody and now Dilbert's been canceled. And it's like, there's nothing easier to cancel than a comic out of your news. There's plenty of comics out there that you could use to replace Dilbert. Dilbert is like the Office Max of comics. It's like these things are shuttering all over the nation. Why do we even need any more?
Yeah, and I think like it's also like you're done. Like they want to cut costs at newspapers. Like every fucking
who wants to pay this guy? It's like I'm only going to pay. Why would I can probably pay somebody else who just has an up and coming comic a fraction of the amount I'm paying the Dilbert guy.
I also feel like the people who are still so he's starting like a Patreon. He's going to keep Dilbert stays alive on his Patreon, and it's like.
Who's going to pay for that comic?
That's what I'm saying is like the people who are going to support him are going to be like, yeah, I really want to see someone have make a pun about a printer, you know? Like these people are driving trucks and shit.
I don't even think I'd pay 25 cents to read any comic, like any daily comic, like Garfield.
Yeah.
Garfield. Everybody loves Garfield. Or like The Far Side. I'm not paying $0.25 to get my Far Side.
Even The Far Side, which was like kind of an edgy thing. Yeah. It's like I guarantee you there's something better available on the internet now. It's like it's like how we have like it's like Seinfeld versus Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is not a reference that's going to land for you very hard. But you're
I like Seinfeld.
Right, but you're like, have you watched Curb ever?
Nah.
So Curb is like it's like Seinfeld pure and uncut, right?
Yeah.
Like it's there's no point in making Seinfeld now because we have the real deal.
Right.
And it's Curb. It's the fucking insane mind of Larry David, essentially unfiltered, right?
Yeah.
Without the constraints of network television and all that. And you have stuff on the internet. We have memes. Why do we need fucking comics, you know? Like, I think that's kind of what's taken the place of, is Ziggy, oh man. Ziggy's complaint that was too much of a fucking stretch, but Ziggy's complaint is that Scott Adams is too racist. The creator, tried to make a joke about that and write it on here, and the creator of Ziggy died in like 2011. So
wow, unfortunate.
There's a Seinfeld tie-in too, but you don't know Seinfeld well enough, so you gotta fucking go watch Seinfeld. All right, should we play our game? Is there any reason for us to continue? There's amazingly nothing left on this list. I felt like it was an eventful week, and it took forever to get here. We're going to play the home run game, but I want to try a different way this time again. I want to try a third different way, which is I don't want to do over-under this time. I want you to guess, and I'm kind of debating of how much information we should actually give. So I think we should limit the information that we give because sometimes when we give like total at bats, it takes away some of the like. So to this time, which we're at, I think I'm down by like 15ish. We'll start a tally, folks. It'll be running at some point.
It's been pretty competitive so far.
Yeah, it's close. You took a big commanding lead early, and you've held on to it. But I'm going to give you just some biographical information. My guy this week is Tom Lampkin.
Wow. Mariner backup catcher. That's a really deep cut.
It's a deep cut, and I think this is the kind of guy. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information. He starts his career in 1988, plays his first games in the major leagues in 1988. Last games of his career in 2002.
Okay.
Left-handed catcher. Or was he left-handed? Yeah, he was a left-handed hitting catcher.
He was left-handed.
Which is, I wasn't sure if he was a switch or left-handed hitting, but love a left-handed hitting catcher.
Sure.
Love John Jaso. The other guys, Joe Mauer. You love those guys because they become like guys that you can naturally platoon. So you don't have to. I loved Tom Lampkin when he was here. Played a role in some of the exciting Mariners teams.
Yep.
He was there in 99, 2000, 2001. If you'd put a gun to my head and said, which era of the Mariners did Tom Lampkin play in, I would have said the 95, 96 teams.
He was after that, though. He was like 2000, 2001, right? Or
it was 99, 2000, 2001, okay. I believe, yeah. And I don't think I can give you, I think I should not give you the amount of games or at-bats.
I have a general idea of how his career was pretty long because I remember I had a baseball card of him from like the 80s. Right. So if he was playing until 2001, he ended up having a pretty lengthy career. But I think a lot of it was probably spent in like AAA as opposed to being in the majors that whole time.
There certainly is a Crash Davis element to him, but I will say he played, I'll give you some information. He played 1988, didn't play any games at the majors, 1989.
Okay.
Played 1990 through 1993, did not play any games in the majors in 1994, and then played in the majors every season from 95 to 2002 when he retired as or maybe was forced into retirement by the San Diego Padres after playing for the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, so he had a pretty long career.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the task this week is you just guess.
Oh, guess the number?
You just guess the amount of home runs that Tom Lampkin hit.
So he played every day from 95 to 2002.
I didn't say every day. I said he played.
He was in the majors the whole time.
He was in the majors.
That's 8 seasons, but he's a backup catcher, so he's playing.
Yeah, and I don't know what the breakout is because he could have been in the AAA for parts of that.
On average, he's probably playing a third of the season. So he's playing 162 games. So there's like he's playing, I don't know, 60 games a year, let's say, maybe. And there's probably some of those are like pinch hits or like just short stints. But full games, he's maybe playing 60 of those. And he might have a home run, I don't know. It doesn't happen very often. He was never a big home run guy. So if he's playing every day for 8, or, playing full-time in the majors for 8 seasons, 60 games a year, he's maybe getting 10 home runs if he's lucky. And that's over 8 seasons, and he's probably not even getting that many. I'm going to guess the number is 61.
That's a pretty damn good guess. So Tom Lampkin, 2,052 plate appearances, 1,796 at-bats. He did a lot of pinch hitting for the Mariners. It was like
he was a good pinch hitter. He was a clutch hitter when he was here, for sure. I remember that.
To borrow like an empty description of somebody.
He was the grizzled vet at that point. He had like the kind of salt and pepper beard. It looked like he enjoyed drinking after the game.
Yeah, and I think if you, again, he's a lefty, so I think if you pulled up his splits, they're probably pretty good in favor of hitting right-handed pitching.
Yeah.
Which made him very useful on those Mariners teams.
I hope I'm not under. If I'm over with 61, I'll feel okay about it. But if I'm under and I left him short, I'd feel bad about it.
Yeah, Tom Lampkin's a big donor of our Patreon, so you will. I think he might.
He is low. He's from here. He went to like Blanchette or something like that.
Is he from? I think he might be from Blaine. No, he's from Cincinnati, Ohio. Is what this is.
I think he was maybe born there, but he definitely grew up in the Seattle area.
All right, let's find out where Tom Lampkin grew up before I fucking give you the number.
I also have a local guy that I'm going to give you after this. Hopefully you haven't looked him up. If you ever give me one that I looked up and I have a good idea of the number, I'm going to tell you.
Okay, that's
nice.
That
you can change.
Nice. So he did go to the University of Portland. That's good. Personal life, grew up in Vancouver, lived in Vancouver, Washington. Played at he's a head baseball coach as of 2012, he was the head baseball coach at Union High School in Camas, Washington. So Washington
So he
ties.
still lives here.
Tom Lampkin, 56 home runs. Pretty fucking good. Because when you started to go 10 years, or 10 home runs a year, 8 years, I was like, oh, I got a good one here.
Yeah, no, I knew that would be way over.
Actually had like a
off by
160 isolated power, which for the time was pretty good. It wasn't like now where guys are hitting a ton of home runs.
Yeah.
I think, and by the way, hit the most home runs of his career at 38 years old. His final career, 2000, or his final year, 2002, in San Diego.
That old man strength kicked in.
Yeah, he hit 9 in almost 30 fewer games and 100 fewer plate appearances with the Mariners in 1999.
Man, being off by 5, that's not bad.
That's pretty fucking good.
Are we going to keep the difference of like the actual
the 5
guess?
is different. 5 is different. So that's where I think we kind of have an opportunity.
Yeah,
I think we can switch it up. We can do over under sometimes.
No, I like guessing the number. I think that's and I like over under too. That's fine. But guessing the number is it's fun because that's totally on you. You're coming out of nowhere. Okay, you ready for this one?
Yep.
All right, this guy is like I said, local ties. Jeff Cirillo.
Got it.
Okay. Now, Jeff Cirillo didn't have the best time in Seattle as a Mariner, but he had
notably bad.
He had a pretty good career prior to that. He was a 2-time All-Star before he came here. He played from 1994 to 2007, mostly in the majors that entire time. His first season, 94, he only played 39 games, so he got called up by Milwaukee at that point. But after that, he was pretty much a regular until the end of his career. Do you want the plate? We're not doing plate appearances.
Not plate appearances. Okay. But the years is good. It was like 13, 14 years.
Yeah, and pretty much a regular that entire time. He was a regular from 95 till the end, basically, so 2007. But as you might recall with his time in Seattle, he had injuries here and there. A couple seasons he didn't play full seasons, but for the most part, I mean, he had a string from like 95 to 02 playing pretty much every single day. Not really a power hitter.
Yeah.
But he did hit some home runs.
My recollection, and tell me if this is correct, and this is the only information I'm going to ask, is just to make sure that I'm not completely out of my ass on this. He played in Colorado, right?
He played. He only played 2 seasons in Colorado. Gotcha. They were the 2 seasons he had before he came to Seattle.
Yeah, so that's part of what led to the...
He was an all-star there, his first season in Colorado.
Right. Well, obviously, we all know that Colorado inflates offensive numbers, and he did that at a time, if I recall, where that wasn't like... We hadn't fully quantified it publicly yet, where it was like Dante Bichette is an all-star. Fucking Andres Galarraga is like borderline Hall of Famer.
Yeah, 94 to 99, he's in Milwaukee. 2000, 2001, Colorado. The next 2 seasons is in Seattle, and then 04 to 07.
He was in San Diego at some point also?
He was in San Diego right after he left Seattle, and then he went back to Milwaukee for the last 2 years of his career.
Gotcha. So not a great power hitter. It's going to be tough to come within 5 on this because Jeff Cirillo is a guy, I don't think he's hit 300 home runs, but it's like in that category. First off, the 2 years in Colorado, my suspicion is that those are like not even great Colorado power numbers. My guess is like 25. My bet is those 2 years he got 50 home runs combined.
The first year he gets to Colorado, he's 30 years old too. So he played a lot of time in Milwaukee, and people don't remember that because like you were never watching Milwaukee Brewers games in the 90s. Right.
So the question is he north or south of 200? And my guess is I'm going to guess 181 home runs.
112.
Jesus,
he really didn't hit many home runs. Yeah.
Wow.
His season high was 2001 Colorado. He had 17, and that was the highest. Like he didn't even get double digits the rest of his career at that point. So there was a 1, 2.
He was 3. Like I remember him being like when he came here, he was like a doubles guy. That was like the big thing.
There was a 6-year stretch where he had double digits every single year. So from 96 through 2001, he was in double digits every single one of those years.
I fucked myself hard once again.
Yeah, that's
the worst one yet.
It's way lower than you would have thought.
That's a great example of the game, though. That was a perfect execution of the game.
Yeah,
and why actually I think, what if you had set the over under, what would you have set it at?
For him, man, I probably would have gone on the higher end just because the longevity and the perception of him is I probably would have gone like 175.
Yeah.
Because I think that still leaves you a little room on the over.
Yeah.
But that's a tough one. Yeah, he's a tough one, man. Because his numbers after, like, from Seattle onward to the end of his career, terrible. They're just abysmal.
He was in Seattle when the fences were still out.
Yeah.
And man,
was
that
really
was
bad.
A brutal loss on my part.
That was
I
a tough
fucked
one.
myself. This is my idea for a game.
Guessing the exact. I like guessing the exact number. It actually, because like in general, any major league player is between like 0 and 500, right?
Uh-huh.
Like the few that go above 500 are elite. We all know who they are, and everyone else is in that range somewhere.
If you have any suggestions, folks, for who we should guess, tweet at us, and hopefully we don't both see it, and we'll be honest if we do.
I won't look it up. If a name comes my way, I won't look it up.
Yeah, that's the challenge of doing like a themed one, like I said, is if we're like, let's do Cleveland Guardians or let's do whatever. I
like just pulling a person out of nowhere, out of thin air.
It is fun. It's fun also because what I like about it is if I say Tom Lampkin in most circles, nobody knows who I'm talking about. Even Jeff Cirillo probably at this point is like, people are like, who the fuck is that? Yeah, so where did you say he was from originally? What's his?
Cirillo?
Yeah.
I know he lived when he came to Seattle. I think his wife was from here or something.
Gotcha.
So they lived here and they still live here.
Okay.
Yeah, in
what
like
city?
the Redmond-ish area.
Fuck Redmond. I hate it now. Fuck you, Jeff Cirillo.
Nice guy. He's a
Now
really
fuck
nice
him.
guy.
I wish he would have hit more home runs.
He didn't play very well for us,
He
unfortunately.
didn't consider hitting more home runs for this game.
You might go to a comedy show one day and he'll be there in the audience.
Oh man, I will.
And if you see him, you should do a joke about it.
Yeah, I'll say, fuck you, Jeff Cirillo, you piece of shit. You came to my city and weren't that good for a little while. All right, that's the end of the podcast. What a way to end it. Just a vendetta, lifelong vendetta against Jeff Cirillo.